Scotland, Part 2.
Scotland Part 2 Table of Contents.
Dr. Sydney Soclof. drsidney22@gmail.com. 2022.
Narration by Dr. Sydney Soclof.
Zoe Phonemes.
And Nathan Coltove.
To play or pause the video, select the appropriate icon, or press the K key or the space bar.
The right and left arrow keys will advance or retard the video by 5 seconds, respectively, in both the play and pause modes.
If you see this in the upper right corner of the video, and you select the left mouse button, it will give you a list of recommended videos or a playlist of related videos. If you select this arrow and then exit the full screen, you will see a display of the chapters like this example. This is the listing of the first 6 chapters, and by scrolling down, you can see the rest of the chapters. Chapter 1. Edinburgh.
Edinburgh, in Scottish Gaelic, Don 18, is the capital city of Scotland, a position it has held since 1437. It is the 7th largest city in the United Kingdom and the 2nd largest Scottish city, after Glasgow.
Owing to the rugged setting and vast collection of medieval and Georgian architecture of Edinburgh, including numerous stone tenements, it is often considered one of the most picturesque cities in Europe.
At the city's core is the old town's Castle Rock, a plug of black basalt sealing the vent of an extinct volcano. It stands 250 feet, 76 meters, above the valley floor and is crowned by the famous Edinburgh Castle.
Some 600 feet, 180 meters, north of the Castle Rock, across the valley that is now Princess Street Gardens, is the new town, a district that was planned and built in successive phases between 1767 and 1833.
This shows the location of Edinburgh on the southern shore of the Firth of Forth.
This shows the location of Edinburgh on the southern shore of the Firth of Forth.
Situated on the shores of east-central Scotland, Edinburgh stands on a group of hills and crags between the Firth of Forth, an estuary of the Forth River, which empties into the North Sea, and the Pentland Hills.
This shows Edinburgh and surrounding communities.
Edinburgh's climate is cool and frequently cloudy with moderate precipitation, and the nearness to the sea generally precludes extreme temperatures.
The city is affectionately nicknamed Auld Reekie, which is Scots for Old Smoky, because when buildings were heated by coal and wood fires, chimneys would spew thick columns of smoke into the air.
Some have called Edinburgh the Athens of the North and Auld Reekie for its intellectual history, with the old town of Edinburgh performing a similar role to the Athenian Acropolis. Edinburgh is also known by the Latin names of Anita or Edinensis.
This is the Edinburgh coat of arms, with the city motto, Nisi Dominus Frustra, which translates to, without the Lord, everything is in vain. Chapter 2. Edinburgh History.
Castle Rock was occupied by the Picts about the 6th century AD and the 11th century. Malcolm III, King of Scotland, had his castle here, and his wife, Saint Margaret, built a small church.
King Robert Bruce granted Edinburgh a charter in 1329.
In 1437 Edinburgh became the national capital following the murder of King James I at Perth, the former capital.
Edinburgh lost much of its commercial and administrative importance in 1603, when James VI became James I, King of England, and departed for London. By the Act of Union with England in 1707, the Scottish Parliament was dissolved and Scotland was governed by the British Parliament.
Edinburgh was one of the major centres of the Enlightenment, led by the University of Edinburgh, earning it the nickname Athens of the North.
Edinburgh's boundaries were expanded considerably in 1856 when Newtown was absorbed, and then in 1900 and 1920. With its limited industrial base, Edinburgh largely escaped the ravages of economic depression in the 1930s and the bombing endured by other British cities in World War II.
The Old Town and New Town districts of Edinburgh were listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1995. There are over 4,500 listed buildings within the city.
Edinburgh is the seat of government in Scotland. The 129-member Scottish Parliament, created in 1999, meets in a specially built complex along the city's Royal Mile, near the Holyrood Palace. Scotland's system of legal administration is also centred in Edinburgh, where the Scottish Supreme Courts meet.
Edinburgh is Scotland's financial, cultural, educational, and service industry hub. Edinburgh's history and architectural riches make it one of the chief tourism centres in the United Kingdom.
Edinburgh has a city population of 500,000. Making it the second largest city in Scotland after Glasgow with 610,000. The metropolitan area population is 780,000, ranking it 14th in the UK, and considerably behind Glasgow in 10th place with 1.4 million.
Edinburgh is well known for the annual Edinburgh Festival, a collection of official and independent festivals held annually over about 4 weeks from early August. The number of visitors attracted to Edinburgh for the festival is roughly equal to the population of the city.
The most famous of these events are the Edinburgh Fringe, the largest performing arts festival in the world. The Edinburgh Comedy Festival, the largest comedy festival in the world.
And the Edinburgh International Festival, the Edinburgh Military Tattoo, and the Edinburgh International Book Festival.
Edinburgh is the most important tourist destination in Scotland.
Edinburgh attracts over 1 million visitors a year, making it the second most visited tourist destination in the United Kingdom after London.
Edinburgh's expansion beyond its medieval boundaries to Newtown was planned by the Town Council in 1767.
Chapter 3. The Economy of Edinburgh. The most important part of the economy of Edinburgh is the service industry sector, which includes jobs and public administration, education, medicine, finance, tourism, trade and distribution, and transport and communications. These service industries employ an overwhelming percentage of the city's workforce. Manufacturing, although still significant, is in decline.
The principal economic strength of Edinburgh is in financial services, tourism, electronics, and information technology.
The importance of financial services, banking, insurance, and funds management has always been considerable in Edinburgh. Leading financial institutions with headquarters in Edinburgh are among the city's largest private sector employers.
Edinburgh's chief manufacturing industries are electrical and electronic equipment, paper, printing, and publishing, food and drink, and, to a lesser degree, chemicals. A number of small firms in the electrical and electronics field specialize in advanced technology.
The printing and publishing industry had been well established in Edinburgh by the 16th century. Scotch whisky constitutes one of the city's important exports.
Chapter 4. Education. Edinburgh's 3 universities are also at the forefront of the development of new technologies and their applications. The University of Edinburgh, founded in 1582, is especially noted for its schools of medicine and law.
Other educational institutions include Yacht University, 1821, Queen Margaret University, 1875, Edinburgh College of Art, 1907, and Napier University, 1964. Named after the Scottish mathematician John Napier.
Scotland's first university was St Andrews, founded in 1413, followed by Glasgow University in 1451, Aberdeen University in 1494, and Edinburgh University in 1582.
Chapter 5. Edinburgh Places of Interest.
This is a map of the central part of Edinburgh.
This is a map of Edinburgh showing major points of interest.
This is a tourist map of Edinburgh showing major points of interest.
This is a map of Edinburgh showing major points of interest.
Principal points of interest in Edinburgh. Royal Mile. This famous street leads from Edinburgh Castle to Holyrood Palace. Edinburgh Castle. This royal fortress is on a hill and home to Scotland's crown jewels. Holyrood Palace, the official residence of the Queen in Scotland. Scott Monument, climb 287 steps to the top. Scottish Parliament, free tours are available of this modern building beside Holyrood.
Calton Hill, climb this hill to view monuments and a view of the city. Arthur's Seat, this is a hill in Holyrood Park with excellent views. Royal Yacht Britannia, in nearby Leith, a must for fans of ships and royalty. Stirling, 38 miles, made famous by Scotland's national hero, William Wallace. In the movie Braveheart, also. The imposing Stirling Castle.
Chapter 6. Edinburgh Castle. Edinburgh's central dominating landmark is Edinburgh Castle, rising on sheer cliffs above the city.
This shows the location of the Edinburgh Castle.
This is a diagram of Castle Rock and the Edinburgh Castle.
This is an overall view of Edinburgh Castle showing some of the points of interest.
This is another diagram of Edinburgh Castle showing some of the points of interest.
Edinburgh Castle is a stronghold that was once the residence of Scottish monarchs and now serves mostly as a museum. It is 443 feet, 135 meters, above sea level and overlooks the city of Edinburgh from the volcanic crag called Castle Rock.
Castle Rock has been the site of human activity for at least 3,000 years. By 600 AD, a Celtic tribe built a fort on the rock. The first king of Scotland who made his residence on Castle Rock was Malcolm III Canmore, who reigned from 1058 to 1093.
Queen Margaret, the wife of Malcolm III Canmore, died in the castle in 1093, and was later canonized as Saint Margaret of Scotland.
Queen Margaret is commemorated in St. Margaret's Chapel. This chapel was built between about 1130 and 1140 on the highest point of the rock.
St. Margaret's Chapel is the oldest surviving building on the castle grounds, and indeed in all of Edinburgh.
This is a view of Edinburgh Castle.
Scotland honors its military tradition in the Scottish National War Memorial, opened in 1927 on the castle grounds,
and in the National War Museum, opened 1933.
Edinburgh Castle is now one of Scotland's top tourist sites, attracting more than 1 million visitors annually.
Just outside the castle drawbridge is a large open area called the Edinburgh Castle Esplanade, where grandstand seating is installed annually for an international military music festival, called the Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo, and for other summer concerts.
The 1 o'clock gun, as it is known, was first fired in 1861 as a timekeeping service for ships anchored on the nearby Firth of Forth. It now is fired at exactly 1 p.m. every day, except Sunday.
It is not true that 1 o'clock instead of 12 noon was chosen by the Scots to save the cost of 11 additional cannonballs.
A giant cannon named Monsmeg was installed in 1457. The barrel diameter is 20 inches, making it one of the largest cannons in the world by caliber.
The Great Hall of Edinburgh Castle was completed by King James IV in 1511.
The room where King James VI, the future King James I of England, was born in 1566 is in the Royal Palace in Edinburgh Castle.
The Great Hall of the Royal Palace was built shortly before the death of King James IV in 1513. It was used for state ceremonies and as the meeting place for the Scottish Parliament until 1640.
The Great Hall now houses a comprehensive collection of arms and armor and stained glass panels.
Chapter 7. Holyrood Palace. The Palace of Holyrood House is commonly referred to as Holyrood Palace. It is located at the bottom of the Royal Mile at the opposite end of Edinburgh Castle.
This shows the location of the Holyrood Palace and Holyrood Abbey at the end of the Royal Mile.
The Palace of Holyrood House is the official residence of the British monarch in Scotland. Currently, Queen Elizabeth II. Holyrood Palace has served as the principal residence of the kings and queens of Scotland since the 16th century, and is a setting for state occasions and official entertaining.
Queen Elizabeth spends 1 week in residence at Holyrood Palace at the beginning of each summer, where she carries out a range of official engagements and ceremonies.
The palace as it stands today was built between 1671 and 1678.
The 16th century historic apartments of Mary Queen of Scots and the state apartments, used for official and state entertaining, are open to the public throughout the year, except when members of the royal family are in residence.
The throne room is used for receptions and other state occasions. The centerpiece of the room is the pair of thrones, commissioned by King George V in 1911. His ancestor, George IV, visited Scotland in 1822, and was the first reigning British monarch to do so in almost 200 years.
The King's bedchamber is the grandest room of all, where historically, only the most important guests would have been granted an audience.
Prince Charles Edward Stuart, better known as Bonnie Prince Charlie, brought the Palace of Holyrood House to life in 1745, when he set up court for 6 weeks.
Charles arrived in Scotland to claim the throne of Great Britain for his father, James Francis Edward Stuart. As he entered the royal palace of his Stuart ancestors, he was cheered by great crowds of supporters.
Holyrood Abbey is next to the Palace of Holyrood House. It was once one of the grandest medieval abbeys in Scotland.
The Holyrood Abbey was enlarged over the centuries in the surviving roofless nave, Romanesque arcading, Gothic windows and vaulted ceiling help us imagine the grandeur of this once magnificent building.
The royal vault in Holyrood Abbey contains the remains of James V.
This is a plaque on the royal vault in Holyrood Abbey.
Chapter 8. The Royal Mile. The Royal Mile refers to the streets linking Edinburgh Castle and the Palace of Holyrood House.
This shows the location of the Royal Mile extending from the Edinburgh Castle to the Holyrood Palace. The Royal Mile is lined with charming townhouses, churches, and historic landmarks.
This splendid thoroughfare is a place to stroll for its shops, including kiltmakers, inns, museums, cafes, and restaurants.
Many of the buildings are tall, averaging 6 to 15 stories and referred to locally as lands. Narrow little alleys, called wynds, with the hidden backyard closes, weave in and around them.
This shows some of the points of interest along the first part of the Royal Mile, starting at Edinburgh Castle. This is Castle Hill and Lund Market Streets, and includes St. Giles Cathedral.
This shows some of the points of interest along the second section of the Royal Mile, which is High Street, and includes the John Knox House.
This shows some of the points of interest along the last section of the Royal Mile, which is Canongate Street, and ends at the Holyrood Palace.
Chapter 9. Edinburgh Old Town.
This shows the location of the old town, with the Royal Mile at its center, and extending from the Edinburgh Castle to the Holyrood Palace.
Edinburgh may seem to be two separate cities. The 18th century elegant Georgian neighborhoods of stately terraces of Newtown are so different from the old town's narrow winding lanes, steep staircases, and hidden passageways.
Many of the most popular tourist attractions are along the Royal Mile, along the crest of the hill between Edinburgh Castle and Holyrood Palace and Princess Street. However, on the other side of the hill is the picturesque Grass Market. This is one of Edinburgh's most important market squares, ever since the Middle Ages.
This shows the location of the Grass Market, just south of Edinburgh Castle.
In the pedestrian-friendly Grass Market area of shops and cafes is the White Hart Inn, where Robert Burns once wrote poetry.
Other notable buildings in Old Town include St. Giles Cathedral
and the National Church of Scotland, most from the 15th century.
There is also the Parliament House that was the seat of the Scottish Parliament from its completion in 1639 until the Act of Union in 1707.
This is the house of the 16th century Protestant reformer, John Knox.
Chapter 10. St. Giles Cathedral. St. Giles Cathedral is on High Street, along the Royal Mile. It was consecrated in 1243 and is Edinburgh's principal church. The 161-foot central tower, with its 8 arched buttresses, forms a huge crown, the crown steeple, and is a favorite backdrop for photos.
This shows the location of St. Giles Cathedral and the house of John Knox on the Royal Mile.
The interior of St. Giles Cathedral has memorials to the dead of World War I and a statue of John Knox, the leader of the Protestant Reformation.
The Thistle Chapel of the cathedral is known for its oak carvings, heraldic emblems, and seals of the Knights of the Thistle, Scotland's oldest order of knights. It was designed in 1911 and is a superb example of modern Gothic style.
Chapter 11. New Town. Just to the north of the Old Town is the New Town. This area was developed in the late 18th century as a pioneering venture in town planning.
New Town contains many fine examples of Georgian architecture, including buildings designed by Scottish architect Robert Adam.
This shows the location of the New Town, just to the north of Old Town.
This is Edinburgh New Town as viewed from Edinburgh Castle.
Note the rectangular street layout of New Town, as well as the adjacent northern New Town.
This is Edinburgh's New Town, viewed from Edinburgh Castle. Princess Street and the Princess Street Gardens are visible in the foreground.
Chapter 12. Princess Street and Gardens. Princess Street has been described as one of the most beautiful thoroughfares in the world.
Princess Street is the New Town's busy main thoroughfare. It extends for almost a mile and is lined with colorful gardens and elegant shops.
The shops on Princess Street include the tradition-conscious Jenners of Edinburgh, the world's oldest independent department store.
The House of Fraser's at the western end of Princess Street is also impressive.
The Princess Mall has a variety of small shops set among fountains and cafes. There are also restaurants, from fast food to gourmet bistros along Princess Street.
The new Register House is at the east end of Princess Street in the New Town, and is home to the Scottish National Archives, some of which date from the 13th century.
Princess Street's historic landmarks include the 200-foot-tall Sir Walter Scott Monument and the David Livingstone Memorial, a memorial to the missionary and African explorer.
Separating the two districts is Princess Street Gardens, occupying the bed of a lake that was drained in 1816.
The Princess Street Gardens is home to the world's oldest floral clock, dating back to 1903.
This shows the location of the east and west Princess Street Gardens and the floral clock.
This is a view of the Princess Street Gardens.
Adjacent to the Princess Street Gardens is a large neo-Gothic monument to Scottish novelist and poet Sir Walter Scott. At 200 feet, 61 meters, tall, the Scott Monument is the largest monument in the world dedicated to a writer.
This shows the location of the Scott Monument.
The Scott Monument is a Gothic monument built in honor of the Scottish writer Sir Walter Scott. It was inaugurated in 1846. The Scott Tower on Princess Street is blackish in color, giving it an eerie beauty.
The spire of the Sir Walter Scott Monument is decorated with 64 figures representing various characters from the writer's novels.
Chapter 13. Museums and Galleries. Among Edinburgh's cultural institutions are the National Gallery of Scotland, opened in 1859.
This is the Scottish National Portrait Gallery built in 1882.
Chapter 14. National Museum of Scotland. The National Museum of Scotland has become one of Scotland's most popular attractions since opening in 2011. It has close to 2 million visitors each year and incorporates collections from a number of Edinburgh's older museums.
This shows the location of the National Museum of Scotland.
Highlights of the National Museum of Scotland include archaeological collections, medieval artifacts, and displays focusing on natural history, geology, art, science, and technology.
The 16 galleries of the National Museum contain more than 8,000 artifacts, including Dolly, the sheep, the world's first cloned mammal.
Chapter 15. The Scottish National Gallery. The Scottish National Gallery opened in 1859. This museum houses Scotland's national collection of fine art, with Scottish and international art, from the beginning of the Renaissance up to the start of the 20th century.
This shows the location of the Scottish National Gallery.
Chapter 16. The Scottish Parliament. This is the building of the Scottish Parliament.
This shows the location of the Scottish Parliament.
Chapter 17. The Scotch Whisky Experience. The Scottish Whisky Experience offers tours and whisky tasting.
The Scottish Whisky Experience is home to the world's largest collection of Scotch whisky, with a total of 3,384 bottles.
This shows the location of the Scottish Whisky Experience.
Chapter 18. Arthur's Seat and Salisbury Crags. Arthur's Seat is the highest point in the 640-acre Holyrood Park. The spectacular views from the top at 820 feet encompass the whole city all the way to the mouth of the Forth.
This shows the location of Arthur's Seat in Holyrood Park, with respect to Holyrood Palace and Edinburgh Castle.
This again shows the location of Arthur's Seat in Holyrood Park, with respect to Holyrood Palace and Edinburgh Castle.
Chapter 19. Calton Hill. Calton Hill offers views of Edinburgh.
Calton Hill is also the location of the City Observatory and several monuments and buildings. These include a National Monument, Nelson Monument, Dougald Stewart Monument, Robert Burns Monument, and Political Martyrs Monument.
This shows the location of Calton Hill. Chapter 20. Hop on hop off Edinburgh Tour Bus.
A good way to see the major sights of Edinburgh, especially for the first-time visitor, is a hop on hop off bus tour. An example of such a tour is one offered by City Sightseeing.
City Sightseeing has a tour with 14 stops, and narration is available in 9 languages.
This is a map of the route of the City Sightseeing Edinburgh bus tour. The bus can be boarded and left at any of these 12 stops.
This is a list of the stops of the City Sightseeing Edinburgh bus tour. and the points of interest near each of the 12 stops.
Another hop-on hop-off bus tour is offered by Edinburgh Bus Tour.
This is a map of the tour route of the Edinburgh Bus Tour. If you stay on the bus, the duration of the entire loop is 75 minutes.
This is a slightly more enlarged map of the tour route of the Edinburgh Bus Tour.
This is a list of the 14 stops on the route of the Edinburgh Bus Tour.
Chapter 21. Leith. Edinburgh's port facilities. At the towns of Leith and Granton. Service vessels associated with the North Sea petroleum industry.
This shows the location of Leith. Only 2 miles from the centre of Edinburgh.
Leith is the port of Edinburgh. The docks are protected by lock gates from the tidal fluctuations in the Firth of Forth. Cruise ships that dock at Leith tie up alongside the Royal Yacht Britannia, which is open as a visitor attraction all year round.
Some cruise operators provide a shuttle bus service into the Edinburgh city centre, 20 minutes. There are also taxis available outside the terminal building. A journey to the city centre will cost around £10. The centre of Leith is about a 15-minute walk, with many interesting pubs and historic buildings of the original port.
Leith is used by smaller cruise ships. South Queen's Ferry is the port for Edinburgh for larger cruise ships. South Queen's Ferry is 11 miles or 18 kilometers west of Edinburgh.
Larger cruise ships anchor in the Forth, and tenders take passengers to Hawes Pier in the town of South Queen's Ferry.
This shows South Queen's Ferry with the Hawes Pier for tenders, and the Forth Bridge.
This is a scene of the town of Leith.
This is another scene of Leith.
Chapter 22. Royal Yacht Britannia. The Royal Yacht Britannia served as a residence for the royal family for more than 44 years. Throughout that time, the Royal Yacht Britannia traveled to 600 ports in 135 countries, clocking in more than 1 million nautical miles for 968 state visits.
The Royal Yacht Britannia was voted as the UK's #1 attraction by TripAdvisor. It was the home at sea to Her Majesty, the Queen, and the royal family for over 40 years. It is now moored permanently near the ocean terminal in Leith.
This shows the location of the Royal Yacht Britannia and the Edinburgh suburb of Leith.
Chapter 23. Rosyth. Rosyth is 10 miles to the northwest of Edinburgh, across the Firth of Forth, at the northern end of the Forth Bridge.
Rosyth, and in Scottish Gaelic, Rosyth or Rosyth, is a town of about 15,000 people located on the Firth of Forth on Scotland's east coast. It is 3 miles, 4.8 kilometers, south of the centre of Dunfermline.
This shows the location of Rosyth on the north coast of the Firth of Forth.
Rosyth was built to form the coastal port of the modern city and royal burgh of Dunfermline in the early part of the 20th century. Rosyth is about 11 miles, 19 kilometers, northwest of Edinburgh.
Rosyth was founded in 1915 as a garden city, alongside other new settlements in Fife, established as burghs, during the late 19th century and early 20th century.
Chapter 24. Dunfermline. Dunfermline, in Scottish Gaelic, Dunfermline, is a town in Fife, 5 miles from the northern shore of the Firth of Forth, on the route of major road and rail crossings across the Firth to Edinburgh and the south.
These are counties in the Edinburgh area around the Firth of Forth.
These are places of interest in the Edinburgh area around the Firth of Forth. Some of these, such as Stirling, Falkirk, and Prestonpans, are of great historic interest.
This is the district of Fife on the northern side of the Firth of Forth, and opposite Edinburgh.
This shows the location of Dunfermline. It is 18 miles by road from Edinburgh on the north side of the Firth of Forth.
Dunfermline was a capital of Scotland, being an ancient seat of the kingdom's royal court, and an important ecclesiastical centre. Its former abbey, now a parish church, is the burial place for many in the country's line of monarchs, including Robert I and St. Margaret.
Dunfermline Abbey is an important tourist attraction.
Ruins of the former abbey infrastructure today include the remains of the Royal Palace of Dunfermline, the birthplace of Charles I.
Some of Scotland's greatest medieval monarchs were laid to rest at Dunfermline Abbey. Founded as a priory, Dunfermline was made an abbey by David I and later became a royal mausoleum.
The most famous son of Dunfermline was the wealthy industrialist, businessman, and philanthropist Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie was the central figure in promoting its early 20th century urban renewal, and his financial legacy is still of major importance.
At the Andrew Carnegie Birthplace Museum, life in 19th century Dunfermline can be experienced, and what it was like to emigrate to America with just a few possessions.
Exhibits show how Andrew Carnegie became the richest man in the world and father of modern philanthropy.
Andrew Carnegie supported the founding of internationally renowned landmarks such as the Carnegie Hall in New York, the Peace Palace in The Hague, and Mount Wilson Observatory in California.
Carnegie Hall in Dunfermline is an Art Deco theater named after Andrew Carnegie, who was born in Dunfermline. It officially opened in 1937.
The population of Dunfermline is 50,000, making it the 10th largest city in Scotland.
Chapter 25. Stirling. Stirling, with a population of 36,000, is a small, but picturesque and historic city in the Central Belt region of Scotland, about midway between Edinburgh and Glasgow.
This shows the location of Stirling, 40 miles west of Edinburgh on the River Forth.
Stirling's key position as the lowest bridging point of the River Forth before it broadens towards the Firth of Forth made it a focal point for travel north or south, and strategically located for the control of Scotland.
The National Wallace Monument is an imposing monument that overlooks the site of the Battle of Stirling Bridge. This battle was the most notable victory over the English by William Wallace, who was known as Braveheart.
Stirling was once the capital of Scotland, and is still visually dominated by the Stirling Castle.
Stirling Castle is one of the largest and most important castles in Scotland, both historically and architecturally. The castle dates from at least the early 12th century, with the present buildings mostly built between 1490 and 1600.
Stirling Castle was the scene of battles during the Wars of Scottish Independence, from 1296 to 1357, and sieges in 1651 and 1746.
Chapter 26. Recommended Videos, Scotland, Part 2.
Recommended video, Edinburgh, UK, Top 5 Travel Attractions. 1 minute. 5 seconds.
Recommended Video, Scotland, Europe, Vacation Travel Video Guide, 51 minutes. 36 seconds.
Recommended video, Edinburgh, Scotland, Vacation Travel Video Guide, 25 minutes. 43 seconds.
Recommended Video, Edinburgh Vacation Travel Guide Expedia, 6 minutes. 30 seconds. Recommended Video, Edinburgh, Rick Steves, 25 minutes. 5 seconds.
Chapter 27. Scotland Part 2 Table of Contents.